The Dragonback series by Timothy Zahn. Book 5. Dragon and Judge. Chapter 4. In those first crucial seconds, as the man's hand closed on her wrist, Allison tried her best to break free. But the man was a good 8 inches taller and a lot of pounds heavier than she was. He also knew all the same tricks she did, and he clearly wasn't in any mood to be trifled with. A moment later, despite her best efforts, she found herself being hauled bodily down the street. "Who are you?" she demanded, hearing her voice crack with strain. "Let me go! Let me go!" The man ignored her. Allison thought about her corvine tucked away out of sight beneath her jacket, but she was pretty sure he'd be ready for something like that, too. Clenching her teeth, trying to keep from getting dragged off her feet, she left the gun where it was. It was probably just as well that she did. As the man pulled her into a cafe with a closed sign on the door, a second hard-faced man slipped out of concealment in one of the nearby doorways and followed them in. The inside of the cafe was deserted. "What in Gringold's mother is going on?" Allison demanded as her captor dragged her to one of the back tables where they'd be less visible to the people passing by on the street. "Are you cops?" "Got a news flash for you, buddy," the second man said as he frowned at Allison. He looked a lot like the first, except that instead of a bushy mustache, he had a wide mutton chop sideburns. "This is definitely not Virgil Morgan." "No kidding," Mustache growled. He plucked the comm clip from her collar and slid the bag off her shoulder. Almost as an afterthought, he reached under her jacket and took the corvine from its holster. Putting his palm against her chest, he shoved her backward into one of the chairs. "Morgan played it cute and sent a stooge to pick up his goods." "I don't know what you're talking about," Allison insisted. "That's my bag and my stuff." "Where is he?" Mustache asked, sitting down in the chair facing her. Checking to make sure the comm clip was still off, he set it in the bag onto the table in front of him. The corvine he tucked away inside his own jacket. Allison had had plenty of time to get her puzzled look ready. "Where's who?" she countered. "I don't know any Morgans." "Of course you don't," Mustache said. "You just happened to find a lockbox key lying there on the street." "No, I went in and opened my own lockbox," Allison said. "I don't think so," Mustache said. "I paid good money to be alerted when Virgil Morgan's box was opened. It was. You were the only one who left the bank." He picked up her comm clip. "You want to call Morgan and tell him to show, or we kill you? Or would you rather I do that?" "Okay, look," Allison said, feeling sweat breaking out on her skin. This was not what she'd signed up for here. "I don't know any Virgil Morgan. I'm a thief, okay? I tap into bank computers and find out which lockboxes haven't been opened in a while. I go in and clean them out." "Right," Mustache said contemptuously. "And you just happen to pick Morgan's box first?" "What first?" Allison countered. "This is the fifth box I've opened at the bank this week." "And the manager didn't notice anything strange about that?" Sideburns put in. "The manager's a Trin-Trang," Allison said scornfully, "and the two tellers are comfriends. They couldn't pick out a human face between them." "So you've been here a week?" Mustache asked. "3 weeks," Allison corrected. "I came in from Pittering on the missing link." "You have a payment receipt, of course." "As a matter of fact, I do," Allison said. She did, too, since one of the first lessons her father had hammered into her was always carry proof of having been somewhere else. "You want to see them?" "Maybe later," Mustache said, looking at Sideburns again. "What do you think?" "I think we should call the boss and see what he wants to do," Sideburns said, pulling out a flat, palm-sized Unilink. Punching a couple of buttons, he held it up to his ear. Slowly, Allison looked around the room. A Unilink instead of a comm clip meant that the boss was off planet and that he liked the kind of privacy that a Unilink's heavy encryption provided. Whoever had accidentally sicked Mustache and Sideburns on her, it wasn't just somebody with a casual grudge against Virgil Morgan. "Similine, sir," Sideburns said. "We just had a ping on Morgan's lockbox." "No, sir, it was a girl. She claims not to know Morgan, that she taps bank lockboxes for a living." He listened a moment, then looked at Allison. "Empty your pockets," he ordered. "Everything on the table." Allison complied, laying out her set of keys, her makeup kit, her wallet, her small multi-tool, and her pen and notebook. Sideburns gestured to the keys, and Mustache picked them up and sorted quickly through them. He paused a moment at the one Allison had showed the Tring-Trang, then continued on. No bank keys here, he reported when he'd reached the end. How'd you open the box? Sideburns asked. How do you think? Allison retorted. I picked the lock. Right in front of them? I'm good at what I do. She says she picked it, Sideburns relayed. Again, he listened a moment, then gestured at the wallet. Mustache tossed it to him, and he opened to the ID. Allison Cana, he read aloud. No, sir, not to me. He looked at Allison. He wants to know if you do anything besides simple lockpicking, he said. Allison shrugged. Sure, combinations, time beats, freeze darks, pretty much the whole range. Let's find out. Sideburns glanced around, pointed at a half-curtained doorway leading to the cafe's back room. There'll be a safe somewhere back there. You're going to open it. Allison didn't miss a beat. Oh, no, you don't, she said darkly. I know how these little games work. What, you think we're cops? Mustache scoffed. I'm not doing it, Allison said firmly, folding her arms across her chest. And you try to repeat what I just told you, and I'll flat out deny it. You cops are all alike. Mustache gave a theatrical sigh and dropped his hand to his side. And suddenly there was a gleaming pistol 6 inches from Allison's face, pointed squarely between her eyes. Listen to me, little girl, he said quietly. You're what, 15? 14, Allison managed between suddenly dry lips. In that single heartbeat, she was back on Roscrovy again, fighting for her life. Do you want to live to reach 15? Mustache asked. The boss wants the safe open. You're going to open it. Allison's pulse was thudding in her throat, her arms and legs starting to tremble, her stomach wanting to be sick. Then, like a slap across the face, something slid subtly across her skin beneath her shirt. And in that instant, the terrible feeling of helplessness vanished. Because she wasn't alone. She had Taneem. And if the young Kadaf female wasn't nearly as well trained as Jack's own poet-warrior friend, Allison had seen enough of Taneem's abilities to know the kind of help she would be in a pinch. She took a careful breath, rubbing her shoulder gently as if massaging a stiff muscle. Taneem took the hint and subsided. All right, she said. For 500. She had the satisfaction of seeing Mustache's eyes widen slightly. What? 500, Allison repeated. I know the law. If you pay me to commit a crime, it's entrapment and you can't charge me. This is not. Give her the blasted money, Sideburns snapped. Glowering, Mustache put his gun away and pulled out his wallet. 200 up front, he growled, dropping the bills on the table in front of her. All right, she said, forcing the calmness into her voice as she stood up. She'd convinced them, maybe, that she wasn't associated with Jack or Virgil Morgan. But cracking safes wasn't really her area of expertise, not like it was Jack's. The whole thing could still blow up in her face. I'll need my tools. Mustache gestured to the items scattered around the table. Help yourself. Allison picked up her multi-tool and makeup kit. On the other hand, she would bet heavily that her collection of gadgetry was a lot more impressive than anything Jack had. The safe was in a tiny office tucked away beneath a cluttered desk to the right of the knee-hole. It looked to be a typical low-end device. Standard tumblers with probably only a single-stage hazer to block audio intrusion. Well, Sideburns prompted. Patience is a virtue, Allison reminded him as she opened her makeup kit and pulled out the slender powder case. What's that? Mustache asked. It's powder and powder applicator, Allison said, throwing him a scornful look as she snapped it open. Don't you know any actual women? What's it for? It helps cover skin blemishes and imperfections. I know what it's supposed to be for, Mustache snapped. What are you going to do with it? With the powder? Allison asked, unscrewing the mirror set into the case. Nothing. Setting the case aside, she held the mirror by the edge and squinted through one of the pinholes in the back. They were there, right where she'd expected, a trio of infrared lasers slicing invisibly through the space in front of the desk. Got some pingers blocking access, she said, handing the mirror to Mustache. He peered through the pinhole a moment, then handed it back. Nice gadget, he said. Must have set you back some. You just have to know where to shop, Allison said, setting down the mirror and pulling out her mascara tube. Unscrewing the bottom end, she wedged it into her ear. Then, being careful to avoid the lasers, she pressed the open end of the tube uh, against the plate beside the combination dial. A soft hum of static issued from the earphone, the hazer she'd expected. She counted off the seconds as the tiny computer inside the tube analyzed the sound, patterned it, and phase countered it. Before her count reached 30, the sound was gone. Single stage, all right. Leaning forward, again being careful not to brush the laser pattern, she got a grip on the dial and started turning. 2 minutes later, with the clicks from the tumbler as loud and solid as if the whole thing had been a basic training exercise, she had it. Careful, Mustache warned as Allison pulled the door open a couple of inches. I know, Allison assured him, stopping the door's swing before it reached the nearest of the laser beams. I trust there's nothing in here you actually wanted? Mustache raised his eyebrows at Sideburns, who had been murmuring a ringing commentary on Allison's progress into the Unilink. Go ahead and close it, Sideburns said. We'll continue the conversation in the main room. Okay, Allison said when the three of them were back on the cafe proper again. What now? The boss is impressed, Sideburns said. He wants to offer you a job. Allison shook her head. Sorry, I'm kind of booked at the moment. Interesting choice of words, Sideburns said, gesturing to the shoulder bag. Considering we have some stolen property here with your fingerprints and DNA all over it. Allison glared at him. You said you weren't cops. We're not, but we don't mind turning scum like you over to them, Mustache said. Or you can listen to the boss's offer, Sideburns suggested. Like I have a choice? Allison growled, suppressing a sigh. Jack had made it clear he didn't really want her on the SNA. This was his big chance to get rid of her for good. What's the job? Basically the same thing you just did, Sideburns said. He wants you to open a safe. Where? You'll see when you get there. Where? Allison repeated. I need to know up front how dangerous it's going to be. Sideburns made a face. She wants to know where, he said into the Unilink. He listened a moment, then nodded. It's on Brumadum. No police, no curious bystanders, no awkward questions, Mustache added. That helps, Allison said. Brumadum was the planet where Jack had briefly been made a slave a couple of months back. Interesting that whoever was chasing Virgil Morgan had also picked that world too. Her throat seemed to squeeze shut. Someone currently on Brumadum. Someone looking for Virgil Morgan. Someone who desperately needed a safe opened. Arthur Neverland. Oh no, she thought, her heart suddenly racing. No, 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 no. You'll get 20,000 for doing the job, Sideburns went on. Any equipment you need will also be provided. And if that was Neverland on the other end of the conversation, that meant the safe had to be one of the ones Dracos' advance team, containing the rendezvous data for the main fleet. The information Neverland needed if he was going to destroy the refugees. The same information Jack and Dracos needed if they were going to save them. Must be a tricky safe, she managed. Very tricky, Sideburns agreed, his voice darkening. I trust you weren't going to try to talk up the price? That had, in fact, been exactly what Allison had been planning to do. It would be expected of a professional thief. But one look at Sideburns' face, and she changed her mind. 20 is fine, she said. But I also want private passage away from there when I'm done. Someplace like Capstone or Glitter. Brumadum isn't a place I want to get stuck on. An actual, real smile touched Sideburns' lips. I don't blame you, he said. Don't worry, they'll make sure you get out of there. Allison felt a shiver run through her. Yes, they'd get her off Brumadum, all right. But not to some nice, safe, civilized world. More likely to some nice, quiet, lonely grave. Okay, it's a deal, she said. How do I get there? For a minute, Sideburns listened to the Unilink, his forehead creased with concentration. Yes, sir, he said. Yes, sir, don't worry. We'll be there. Shutting off the device, he put it away. The boss has a ship he can divert this way, he told Mustache. It'll be in the system in 4 hours. I've got the coordinates for a quiet rendezvous. Fine, Mustache pointed at the shoulder bag. What about this? Might as well send it along, Sideburns said, unless it's full of money. Mustache opened it and peered inside. Old newspaper and magazine clippings, copies of bills of lading and invoices, and a few fuzzy photos, he reported, sifting through the contents. And a couple of data tubes. No money. In that case, send it along, Sideburns said. The boss might like to see what Morgan's been hiding all these years. Mustache handed the bag to Allison. Looping the strap over her shoulder, she scooped up the rest of her personal belongings from the table and stuffed them back into her various pockets. She reached for her comm clip. Mustache's hand got there first. I'll take this, he said. He started to put it in his pocket, then paused. Let's check, shall we, just for the fun of it? Clicking it on, he held it to his own collar. Hello, Virgil? Allison held her breath. But from the wry pucker of Mustache's lips, she could tell that Uncle Verge had anticipated this possibility. I see you like classical music, he said. Beethoven, isn't it? He handed the comm clip to her. Allison held it against her collar to find that Uncle Verge had piped in the feed from one of the Semeline's music broadcasts. Schubert, actually, she said, starting to fasten it back on. Don't bother, Mustache said, taking the clip and shutting it off again as he put it into his pocket. There won't be any news or music broadcasts for you to listen to along the way. Come on, girl, Sideburns said, gesturing toward the door. You're in the big time now. Don't want to keep them waiting. Allison shivered. No, she murmured. Of course not.